So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think the Free Speech Union has become a fundamental part, a necessity of British life, and that's probably quite a sad thing to say, but it has been, and we're living through times of great censorship, clamping down on people's speech. I was visited by Essex Police on Remembrance Sunday over a tweet I'd posted a year before. Not a particularly offensive tweet, but nevertheless the police came to my house. I was able to get in touch with the Free Speech Union. They gave me a wonderful solicitor called Luke, and they gave me the confidence to get through that really frightening experience. And I know they've done the same thing for many, many people who don't have the platform I have as a journalist. So I would like to say thank you to Lord Young, Toby, and all the absolutely brilliant Jan, Ian, all the fantastic people of the Free Speech Union. Long may you continue, but not be needed as much as the years go by. Freedom.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think it's immeasurable, the difference that the Free Speech Union has made. I mean, in my case, I was dismissed by my employer because I ran for the Reform Party, something I'm perfectly, legally, democratically entitled to do. I was completely knocked for six when it happened. The first thing I did was get on the phone with the Free Speech Union, and they helped me literally within hours in terms of what I needed to do, and they've held my hand throughout this entire employment tribunal process. Had I been on my own, no way would I have had the wisdom, the intelligence, and definitely not the money to actually fight my employment tribunal case. They've afforded me justice, and you can't put a higher price on that.
Right, I'm Harry Miller from Fair Corp, and I've got to say, when the Free Speech Union was being set up, Toby Young described me and Fair Corp as the radical wing of the Free Speech Union, which I really quite like. But what I've actually learned is that Toby and the FSU are radical themselves. I mean, there is no giant that is too big for them to go out and want to slay. We've got Northumbria Police, we've got the Premier League, we've got the FA, we've got absolutely everybody, and they're my kind of people. And what Britain needs, what Ireland needs, in fact, what the world needs is more Toby Youngs, more Harry Millers, more Free Speech Union, and more going into battle with that sense of British history, freedom, and fearlessness. So that's what the FSU means to me.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think it has given heart to an enormous number of people who are close to desperation. And I know what it's meant to people who are afraid and now know that there's somewhere to turn if it happens to them, whatever kind of organisation they were in. There's no question about how the difference courage makes. And a lot of us understand that there will be no democracy without free speech.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
Well, I think it's made an absolutely enormous difference just for people who previously didn't have anyone backing them up when they found themselves in trouble at work, with the law. I think the fact that people know that when something happens to them, when their speech is infringed upon, when they're sacked for saying something that they could happily say on the street, that they know they've got backup now. And that's a tremendous difference, I think, for freedom of speech and for people.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
Well, firstly, to me personally, the Free Speech Union has saved my degree at the University of Leeds. It has saved my personal reputation. It has given me a platform to continue fighting for free speech, specifically in universities, but also more broadly for gender-critical women, which I know is the broad majority of the Free Speech Union's cases. But I think more generally, the Free Speech Union has somewhat restored public trust in the public's power to fight back against this awful new moment we're in, and hopefully on the downward spiral of mass censorship and this idea of people's opinions not just being opinions, but actually being a indicator of someone's own personal morality. And so, yeah, I just think the fact that it's non-partisan and that it's for everyone, I think the Free Speech Union has been, it's an inspiration for the rest of the world, and it's amazing to see it being set up in other countries as well. And I think we'll look back in the history books, and the Free Speech Union will be one of the main contributing factors to fighting this awful cancel culture that we now live in. Yeah.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I believe that we are living in a day and age where our hard-earned freedoms are threatened by the very notion of multiculturalism. And as I see the role of Free Speech Union, I think it's hugely important to have an organized effort to defend the rights that we all hold dear. And especially when we see that these rights that we hold so dear, and they are very much precarious in their nature, we need to defend them even more importantly, because they are threatened not by extremist forces at this moment. They are threatened by those people who claim to be the champion of human rights, and they advocate for equal rights for everyone in the society. They are the very people who are trying to take away the freedom to speak up your mind freely under the guise of protecting people's sensibilities, because they want to have a very cohesive multicultural society. But in my opinion, that this is the last thing that we need, which is censorship. Censorship is the last thing that we need in order to have a cohesive society. And in a society such as ours, we need diversity of people, but yes, we also need diversity of opinion, because without diversity of opinion and the tolerance of opposing views, we can never have a society that can harmonize, in a manner where we can live all together and coexist, in a harmonious way. And the role of Free Speech Union is very important in my opinion, because they are doing the work that many of us want to do, but for some reason, people cannot do it. They cannot afford to lose their jobs. They cannot afford to lose, their friendships. And there are so many other constraints, on your right to free speech. People are afraid to speak up. And I think in this atmosphere, when we are so much threatened, one way or another, it's important to have an organized, organization who can speak, for every one of us.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think it's made a huge difference. I work in publishing, which has been incredibly, ironically, a place where free speech has been quite difficult for people if they want to give their views freely. And there have been several cases I can think of that the Free Speech Union have helped. I know they've helped people like Kate Clancy, and it's been really valuable having a kind of union that doesn't have a particular political slant, helping anybody with their, and especially in an environment where we're all on social media, to have a union that's very engaged with social media and aware of what that means for free speech is really important. So yeah, it's been very valuable.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
Well, we're 3 years on from the Forstater ruling, and still people are being threatened with losing their jobs and losing their livelihoods because of expressing legally held beliefs at work. And the Free Speech Union is helping people fight back. Some people have to go to court, but I know that there are hundreds of cases where the Free Speech Union saves them from having to go to that distance. Eventually we will see a shift in practice in the workplace, and the Free Speech Union will be instrumental in making that happen.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think it's made all the difference because it identified that there was a problem, and it's like it became something physical and real. And you can be talking with your mates, and free speech can seem like such an abstract issue, but when the Free Speech Union came into existence, there was something solid that existed. There were resources that you could find, and then it, of course, became a way to fight back. And that is, each victory is almost, it's a cascading effort of bringing this issue to the fore. So it's lots of little, and Toby said this in his speech, but it's the people who come for you and try and shut you down. They come as a mob. And the only way really to come back is to be organised and to stand together. And the more people that do that, and you saw it even with someone like J.K. Rowling, where she took a stand, that bravery spoke to bravery. But it's not enough to just be a bunch of disparate people popping their heads up on social media. There has to actually be some kind of framework there to attach your beliefs onto. And that's what Free Speech Union does. It's concrete, it exists, and then it's a vessel to allow us to fight for maybe one of the, if not the most fundamental right within Western civilization.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union's made?
I think it's made a huge difference to people's ability to be able to be honest. You know, that's the whole point of free speech, isn't it? You know, and every tyrannical system that's ever crashed down behind us is because free speech has been oppressed. So it's really worth fighting for. And personally, from my point of view, I've been fighting for women's sport. And when I started talking about this in 2015, you know, I literally knew that if I said the wrong thing, I would have policemen standing at my door, or I'd be removed from what was Twitter at that time, for literally stating a biological reality that human beings cannot change their biological sex. And we have separate categories in sport because we are physically different. Can you imagine just saying those things, which are absolute facts, would cause me to be potentially arrested? And I just couldn't quite get my head around that. And it just sort of got gradually worse until we came out the other side of COVID. And then Toby with the Free Speech Union has enabled everyone to feel as if they can just be brave.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
At last, the women in Scotland have a union that they can turn to, which has been sadly lacking for at least 5 to 10 years now.
What difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
Well, it's clear that the Free Speech Union is really needed, and it's demonstrated that in the last 5 years. Our ability to speak freely and write freely, as I try to do, has been enormously under threat. And we've seen this with these crazy non-crime hate issues, you know. It's mad that journalists can be arrested, interviewed under caution for tweeting things. It's crazy you have this kind of offence archaeology where people are constantly reprimanded for things they've said they're nowhere near the legal threshold for breaking any laws, but it seems the police can knock on people's doors and give them a hard time. Look, Britain is the citadel of free speech. This is the country of Magna Carta. The world is watching how we deal with these free speech issues in the age of social media, and they do become more complex in the age of social media. I would say the Free Speech Union has been as important as any other institution in rescuing Britain's reputation as the place where free speech rules above all. I think Toby Young and his team deserve huge accolades for founding the Free Speech Union, for securing funding for the Free Speech Union, for turning it into not just a lobby group, but an institution where people of all political ideas, of all political persuasions can come in order to get redress from a legal establishment, a political establishment, a media establishment, which is now, it seems to me, acting to suppress free speech. Without free speech, we are nothing. Without free speech, the reputation of Britain across the world is seriously undermined. I think the Free Speech Union has done a huge amount to rescue Britain's reputation for free speech over the last 5 years, spawning other organisations in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and all the rest of it. I think Toby Young and the Free Speech Union deserves our thanks and our congratulations for creating what started as a lobby group, but is now a major institution.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
So I think the Free Speech Union has been very important over the last few years in forcing universities, which should be bastions of free speech, to actually uphold the principles of free speech. And unfortunately, the EDI and the hegemony of certain views around gender, around sex, around race, have unfortunately captured the universities, and so it's been very important, and also unfortunately captured the university and college union, which I used to belong to, very proudly a union member, but now it's really, I feel it's the Free Speech Union which best embodies the spirit of free speech and actually provides the kind of on-the-ground protection to academics and students who have want to exercise their free thought and to exercise, their ability to criticize different views and to pursue research where it leads. And so I'm very grateful to the Free Speech Union and both protecting individuals, but also having a much broader effect on the kind of climate of opinion. Because I think administrators, when they know that the Free Speech Union is involved in a case, they know that they can't just bully one particular person. They actually have to have a larger body of collectivity behind them and collective action. And so I think Free Speech Union has really made a sea change in the academic climate over the last few years.
So what difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I've had the privilege of working in UK publishing now for more than 20 years. I've worked for Penguin Random House, I've worked for HarperCollins, and I've worked for Hachette. I think it's absolutely intrinsic and critical and the most important thing on earth that we publish books across the total political spectrum. If we don't do that, how on earth can we be educating the totality of the emerging population about what matters, what doesn't matter, and how to think for themselves? The one thing I worry about now, as a slightly older member of publishing, is that how synthesis works, which is that when you take on ideas, you need to synthesize them for yourselves. You don't listen to someone's view on social media and that becomes your view. You need to synthesize it. And so the Free Speech Union is an incredibly motivating vehicle for people to think about, I have my own view, I need to think for myself, and I also need to act as an individual who thinks intrinsically rather than extrinsically, which ultimately means that what motivates me is not what my friends think, what I think, because I've educated myself, because I've read, because I've researched, and because I believe not for likes, because that's what I believe in.
What is the difference that you think the Free Speech Union has made?
Bet against Toby Young at your peril. I mean, I have lost count of the times where he was considered low status or whatever opinion he had was considered the wrong one. And time again he gets proven right. He has been so creative. And here we are 5 years later. The Free Speech Union is now a really important part of how we defend the values of our society. And he's even a member of the House of Lords, the deepest of the deep state. Congratulations to him and to all of you.
What difference do you think the Free Speech Union has made?
I think the FSU has completely transformed the way that people talk about free speech in the country. I think it's helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people fight cases and just raised awareness of what the threats are. So, it's fantastic that it's reached 5 years and that it's making such a difference.